The Hannity, Germany is now treating the attack on a Berlin Christmas market as an act of terror. I'm Eric Bowling in for Sean. Tonight, Kellyanne Conway, Rudy Giuliani, Governor Scott Walker, Laura Ingraham, and Mike Huckabee all join us. But first, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the country's top prosecutor are now saying terrorism is the likely motive behind the holiday rampage. And according to the Associated Press, ISIS is claiming responsibility for the truck attack. Also tonight, Russian President Vladimir Putin is vowing revenge after the country's ambassador to Turkey was gunned down yesterday. President-elect Donald Trump is reacting to both stories by promising to fight radical Islam, while the White House won't even utter the phrase. Joining us now with reaction is Trump's senior advisor, Kellyanne Conway. Thank you for joining us, Kelly. Big news day, a lot going on in the world. Let's start with the Berlin attack. President-elect Donald Trump says he will fight Islamic terror. He used those two words together. Why did he specifically do that so soon?
Well, it's part of how he ran his campaign and won. People want tough, strong leadership. If you look at the polls, Eric, Americans feel less safe than they did 4 or 8 years ago. Many of them feel less prosperous as well. But, you know, in the last few years alone, we've had radical Islamic terrorists make its way onto our shores here. In San Bernardino, where the woman came through a fiancé K-1 visa. Most Americans didn't even know existed as an option. And, of course, down in Orlando this past May, the worst massacre of its kind in American history, 49 innocent lives being snuffed out by a man who was radicalized as an Islamist on the internet. And so we already know that this exists. We know that those who say that they're the JV team and they're no longer on the advance are just dead wrong. And you see it mostly in Europe. You see Nice and Paris, of course, and Brussels, and now apparently the market in Berlin, Germany. They're non-discriminatory in terms of when they attack, who they attack, but we know why they attack. Because they hate freedom-loving people, and they're on a religious jihad. So
Kellyanne, yesterday the White House said probably terror or likely terror. Donald Trump came out and said, you know what, it's Islamic terror, and we're going to call them out for it, and we're going to stop it. And since then, ISIS has claimed credit for it. So Donald Trump was right.
He's right again. And I was on a show earlier where someone said, why does he get ahead of himself when he doesn't have the evidence? They said the same thing in San Bernardino about him. They said the same thing in Orlando. The man's instincts are correct, and he's right this time as well. By the way, he doesn't say that to be right. He says it to remind all of us, Eric, of who the enemy really is here. And you can't defeat them until you're willing to name them. And one of the untold stories of the election, frankly, is how much it mattered to many Americans that Donald Trump, as the Republican nominee, was willing to stand up so many times and call out radical Islamic terrorism, talk about the fact that the hand-handed way we got out of Iraq created this vacuum where ISIS and its progenitor groups were able to flourish. And he also, you know, you may recall in August or September, he came out with this pretty muscular 4 or 5 point plan to defeat them. So people can go and look it up. They can disagree with it what they want, but he talks about extreme vetting. He talks about all those countries that harbor and train and export terrorists where we have very little vetting process. You and I know that ISIS has promised to come in through the form of refugees, Syrian refugees and others. So they've made very clear that they're just getting started.
Sure. And Kellyanne, the other big story yesterday was the Russian ambassador being assassinated in front of the cameras. In the aftermath of that, let's talk about this, because President Donald Trump is going to walk into some sort of mess with this situation. You have Russia on one hand saying our ambassador is killed and we want someone to pay for that. Yet there are others, like former Ambassador John Bolton, suggesting that maybe this is some sort of plot by the Russians now to use this tragedy to get Turkey to get out of NATO. Now, it's a little wonky, though, but how is Donald Trump going to handle such a hot spot going forward?
Well, the way he handled this particular incident is he did two things, and they're both correct. He did what a leader does. First, he expressed outrage that an ambassador would be killed and that it violates every convention we can think of in an orderly society. Number two, he expressed condolences to the gentleman's family. That's what leaders do before they have all the evidence. And when he's president of the United States, he will make clear what his policies are. But I don't think the president-elect is going to speculate on the rest of it and come up with any type of theory other than what he sees in front of him, which is a cold-blooded murder of an ambassador in a foreign country that he's been serving.
Talk to me a little bit, Kellyanne, about the very, very strategic and important country, Turkey, for many reasons. Its location to Iraq and Syria, its access. ISIS has claimed that they're selling oil to Turkey. It's part of being in NATO. It wants to be in the European Union. What's Donald Trump's Turkey strategy?
Oh, I can't discuss that before he's the president of the United States. I know that he has discussed it, and we're aware of it, but we're very respectful, Eric, until he is the president of the United States and the commander-in-chief starting on January 20th next month, that we have a president currently. Everything you just described about Turkey is 100% correct, and obviously the president-elect is aware of that and discussing that with his leaders. He's made very clear, too, that as soon as he assumes office, he will be convening those leaders, his Secretary of State, his Secretary of Defense, his National Security Advisor, and others. And he will be conferring about the best strategies moving forward in Turkey and elsewhere.
Okay, can we clear this up? Can we talk a little bit about, clearly Vladimir Putin, he's ticked off. He lost an ambassador. Has Putin reached out to President-elect Donald Trump on this assassination yet?
I'm not aware that he has.
Okay. All right, let's move on to this one. Now, there's been some back and forth going on about a phone call that occurred on election night. Now, initially, Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, suggested that Donald Trump had called him. Mr. Trump tweeted today, no, you got it wrong. He called me. Now, you have some intimate knowledge of this.
Oh, I do. Actually, it was the president-elect is correct. On Thursday, November 10th, which basically was a day after the wee hours of November 9th when he won, and that Hillary Clinton called to concede and congratulate him, I received a call from President Bill Clinton's chief of staff who asked if we could arrange a call to have President Bill Clinton congratulate the president-elect. The president-elect was in Washington, D.C., meeting with the current president on November 10th, that Thursday, as we'll all recall. And so we arranged the call. They had a great conversation. But it did go that way, and I saw in a tweet tonight that President Bill Clinton did say, Donald Trump and I agree on one thing, I did call him. It's fine. It may seem like a minor point to some, but it shows you the power of Donald Trump in his Twitter feed when he says, nope, I'm going to correct the record right here. You actually called me, which is true. I just think they're war of the word. It's not really a war of the word. It's a departure in facts when it comes to what just happened in this election. Bill Clinton won the presidency twice because he knew how to win those important blue states in the upper Midwest and other places. His wife failed to do that, and she failed to do that not because Vladimir Putin told them to ignore Milwaukee, but because for some reason they took for granted Wisconsin because it had gone blue in every election since 1984. And so I think Bill Clinton, who knows politics so well, who is clearly the more gifted, masterful politician in his two-person household, he should know better than to be blaming Russian hacking or Jim Comey or Bernie Sanders, how dare he run the primary. Enough of these excuses.
He went even further than Jim Comey. He did. He blamed, the fake email scandal. Then he blamed Jim Comey. In this same comment where he said that Donald Trump had called him, in that same comment, he said Donald Trump knows how to get angry white males to vote for him.
Well, that's not the only group that, first of all, it's an insult, and I think Bill Clinton sounds like, in that case, a Trump voter these days. He seems pretty angry, white male, and that's too bad because he's a former president. We have enormous respect for him and for his legacy, as it were. But we also have to point out that Donald Trump had a very broad coalition in this win. He ran the tables among the same kind of Democratic Union households that Bill Clinton won and Hillary Clinton lost. He ran the tables among rural voters. Frankly, he got almost as much as Mitt Romney got among women, and he ran against the first female president. I would ask the Clintons, why didn't Hillary Clinton get 60 or 62% of the female vote? What's wrong with her running as the first female president? Why does she have this wicked gender gap among men where they disliked her, dismissed her, didn't want her to be president of the United States or commander-in-chief? They just trusted her. She underperformed among millennials. She couldn't bring together the Obama coalition, and she certainly couldn't bring together the Bill Clinton coalition. So it's pretty simple.
Those comments I would call deplorable and irredeemable by Bill Clinton. Is that okay to do that?
I would call them, it's something like that. But I would just call them dead wrong, and it's time to do, look, it's time for the Clintons to do what the Obamas have done, which is to open up the door and say, we are here to help you have a peaceful transition in our great democracy. We're only 1 month away today, Eric, from January 20th, and it's really time for the Clintons to tell all of their adherents, their protesters, this fanciful electoral strategy which failed, the hashtag. It's time for them to tell everybody to support this guy. So
let's tell the audience. I heard some news I heard a rumor today that Kellyanne Conway is going to move to Washington, D.C. Kellyanne, what are you going to do there?
Well, first I'm going to look for a house and some schools for my kids. We'll see how welcome the Trump people are in these schools, Eric. I'm going to serve the president-elect and the vice president-elect in whatever capacity they would prefer me. And we've been talking about that. But either way, you can expect me in Washington, D.C. We're just getting started. This is a man in a big hurry to do great things. And I am all too humbled and honored to be part of that because he's going to make good on these promises of his first 100-day plan. You see the activity and the energy already, just as president-elect and vice president-elect. And it's a very exciting time. And I do want to give a shout-out. I talked today on the phone for half an hour with Valerie Jarrett, and I really appreciate the kind of counsel that I'm getting personally and others on the team are receiving from President Obama's administration and its officials. It's very helpful for us to talk to people who are actually there.
All right, Kellyanne, we're gonna leave right there. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to miss you around the neighborhood. I used to drive around and see Kellyanne and her beautiful family.
Oh, we're keeping our house here.
We wave. Kellyanne,
well,
thank
come
you.
and visit.
Thank you. I will. I'll come visit in D.C. Thank you very much. Coming up, after another stunning attack in Europe, the world is on edge, and President-elect Donald Trump is promising a new approach to fighting radical Islamic terror. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is here with reaction, and later.
To protect our country from terrorism and extremism, we will suspend immigration from regions where it cannot be safely processed or vetted.
Donald Trump is promising extreme vetting of refugees from countries with ties to terror. And now, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker is asking the president-elect for more control over allowing refugees into his state. Governor Walker joins us later along with Dr. Sebastian Gorka. That and
Good evening, and live from America's News headquarters, I'm Jackie Ibanez in New York. A deadly blast tonight at a large fireworks market near Mexico City. Mexican authorities say the explosion killed at least 29 people and injured dozens more. Look at that. This is not the first tragedy to strike this market. Back in 2005, a fire touched off a chain of explosions that leveled hundreds of stalls just ahead of Mexico's Independence Day. Israel is looking to expand its medical assistance to Syrians injured in the battle for Aleppo. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asking Israel's foreign ministry to look into the possibility of bringing non-combatant men, women, and children to Israel for medical treatment. Israel has already treated thousands of Syrians wounded in Syria's nearly 6-year civil war, offering them medical care in hospitals in Israel. I'm Jackie Ibanez. Now back to Hannity for all of your headlines. Remember to log on to foxnews.com.
And extremism. We will suspend immigration from regions where it cannot be safely processed or vetted.
President-elect Donald Trump is calling for extreme vetting of refugees from countries with terror ties. Earlier today, Governor Scott Walker sent the president-elect a letter asking for more control over who comes into his state. Governor Walker and Dr. Sebastian Gorka will join us next. And later, President-elect Donald Trump and Bill Clinton are exchanging words as the former president continues to complain about the election results. Laura Ingraham will be here to weigh in. That and a whole lot more as Hannity continues.
Extreme. Oh, it's got to be extreme.
That was President-elect Donald Trump during his thank you tour promising extreme vetting of refugees from countries with ties to terror today. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker sent a letter to President-elect Donald Trump asking for his state to have more authority over deciding the amount of refugees to accept. Joining us now to explain more is the man himself, Governor Scott Walker. Thank you for joining us. Governor, so what exactly do you want states, Wisconsin, and every state, frankly, to be able to do?
Well, it's all about safety. We want to know who's in our state, particularly if they're refugees coming from places like Syria, where we know the Islamic State has a known presence. We don't want to have happen, sadly, what we've seen happen in many places throughout Europe. We want to know that people have been properly vetted, and we don't have that under the Obama administration, and I believe confidently we're going to have that when Donald Trump's the president.
So it seems so logical to let a state decide who's coming into the state. Why is that? Is this just an Obama policy, and it would be as simple as a policy change for President Donald Trump to fix, or does it have to go through legal machinations?
Well, I think it's something that can be done quite simply. I know last year we were talking with the president's Secretary of Homeland Security, and I know there's a lot of frustration amongst the governors, not just amongst Republicans. Overwhelmingly, obviously, as Republican governors, we were upset, but even some Democrats were upset that they didn't even know who was in their state. And when you think about it, this is not just people coming in from Syria. These are refugees. They are defined, a refugee is someone who's eventually going to go back to their country of origin. I think the whole idea is ridiculous that we're not working with our allies in the Gulf region to make sure that a lot of those folks would be better suited going to some of our partners, some of our allies in the Persian Gulf area, so that eventually, when things improve, they could go back there. If they're coming to the United States, chances are they're not going back. That defies the definition of a refugee. But even for those who legitimately are seeking asylum here, we can't, under this current administration, we can't distinguish between those who might want to do us harm and those who legitimately want to get away from the problems they see in the Middle East.
How does it work? Tell our audience how it works. Do the feds come and say, hey, you know, you're going to have, I don't know, 3,000 refugees who are seeking asylum from various countries coming into Wisconsin. We're placing them there.
They're not even as candid as that. For all the talk and hype about what they do out there, you find out after the fact the states don't have any real ability to have any real control over who's coming in or even knowing until they start. In fact, sometimes you actually hear about it as a governor in the media before you even find out about anything via the government at the federal level. That's just absolutely wrong. It's wrong from a safety standpoint. I just spent about 2 weeks ago, I was in Afghanistan and Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates and Germany, talking to our servicemen and women, and I know the threats are real. I saw it very vividly in places like Afghanistan, where there's more than 20 different organizations that want to do Americans harm through terrorist-related groups, radical Islamic terrorism groups. We know they're all over the world. The last thing we want is people in without vetting them and knowing that they're going to be safe for our families and our citizens.
Sure. And so, Governor, so let's say a neighboring state like Illinois has a wide-open policy. We'll take as many as you want to give us. You're bordering Illinois. What's to stop a refugee to settle in Illinois and next year move up north to Wisconsin?
Well, that's the problem with this. The federal government isn't doing their job. One of the core elements of our federal government, there shouldn't be many. I'm one of those people who think the federal government should be fairly limited. The power should flow back to the states and, more importantly, back to the people. But protecting us, protecting our borders, protecting our country through our military, protecting our national security should be one of the primary roles of the federal government. And they're failing it right now because we don't know whether they come to Wisconsin, Illinois, or anywhere else. We don't know that there's sufficient vetting being done to ensure that these people are not radical jihadists who are going to do us harm.
It's a big issue we have with Europe. When they go into one country, they can travel freely to another country only on a state level here. Governor Walker, thank you for joining us. Keep us abreast of what's going on with that initiative.
Merry Christmas to you and your viewers.
And you too, Governor, and everyone in Wisconsin. Joining us now with reaction is the author of Defeating Jihad, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Gorka, you just heard Governor Walker saying, hey, I want to say in which refugees or any are coming into my state. This seems so logical. Why is the Obama policy just put people in where they want to do it?
I can't agree more with the governor. How outrageous. Are we not a republic made up of states? What is this that the federal authorities can do whatever they wish, willy-nilly, placing people that we know, according to the director of the FBI, cannot be adequately vetted across the nation? Not only that, let me add one more outrageous aspect to the way the Syrian refugee crisis has been dealt with. Once the federal authorities that physically cannot vet these people adequately, hands over these individuals who have been given refugee status by Washington to the local charities that place them into American society. At that point, the federal authorities are not allowed to know where those people live. Only the charities that have placed them into the local communities. That is a recipe for disaster, Eric.
Travel freely, as you say, they're not allowed to track them. Doctor, so ISIS has said, infiltrate the American refugee system. Get our fighters in there through the refugee system. Do you think right now, currently, there are ISIS fighters, jihadists, within our refugee system, people we've taken in?
Without a doubt. Just look at what happened in Europe. They have individuals with asylum status, refugees who had asylum status in the European Union, executed attacks in Europe in the last 2 years. That's just a fact. The reality is that when you're coming from a war zone, unless we have the time to vet you with in-depth counterintelligence interrogations, we don't know who you are because Assad isn't going to give us the data to check who you are. As a result, it is impossible to verify exactly your intention. So ISIS has said, we will use the refugee streams. Of the 400 plus terrorist cases that have been prosecuted in America in the last 15 years, more than half of them involved people who were not born in the United States, many of them who were immigrants or people who had refugee status. These are just the facts, Eric.
Right. Now, you touched on something very important. The federal government, the feds aren't allowed, not allowed to track the refugees once they're placed. What do you mean they're not allowed?
They're not allowed to know where these people... So once the dossier gets... Once they've been ticked, yes, you're an asylum seeker, yes, you're a refugee, they've been approved by the federal government, and then a charity takes over, often a Catholic charity.
Well, I understand the process, but why aren't they allowed? What prohibits them from following?
Privacy rights of people who aren't Americans, Eric. This is the absurdity. This is the same reason that was given as to why the Facebook page of somebody like the San Bernardino killer, the woman who came on a fiancé visa, why her Facebook page, which had jihadist material on it, could not be accessed, could not be read by a federal government employee, because that could have impinged her privacy.
Privacy rights of people who aren't American, and frankly, we're having a hard time vetting. Dr. Gorka, thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric.
Coming up, Donald Trump and Bill Clinton are in a war of words after the former president took a shot at the president-elect. We'll tell you what they're now saying, and Laura Ingraham will be here with reaction next. Plus,
I am asking Congress to support the construction of new roads, bridges, airports, tunnels, and railways all across our nation. We're going to do it.
President-elect Donald Trump is vowing to fix America's crumbling roads and bridges as a new report says he's putting together a task.
Good evening and live from America's News headquarters, I'm Jackie Ibanez in New York. ICE is now claiming responsibility for yesterday's Christmas market attack in Berlin, Germany. 12 people were killed, 50 injured when a truck driver slammed into the busy downtown market. German police are still hunting for the driver right now. They had arrested a Pakistani man who matched witness descriptions but released him because there wasn't enough evidence to tie him to the rampage. A brush fire burning dangerously close to homes in Simi Valley, California. Firefighters from both Ventura and Los Angeles counties fighting the flames, which have burned more than 60 acres tonight. No evacuation orders have been issued, and so far there are no reports of injuries or damaged homes. It's not clear yet what sparked the brush fire, but California has been plagued by a severe drought. I'm Jackie Ibanez. Now back to Hannity. For all your headlines, log on to foxnews.com.
Welcome back to Hannity. The election is over and the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump is just a month away, but former President Bill Clinton is still making excuses for his wife's devastating defeat. Watch this.
She fought through everything, and she prevailed against it all, but, you know, then at the end we had the Russians and the FBI deal, but she couldn't prevail against that.
The former president echoed those excuses to a local newspaper, saying that Trump, quote, doesn't know much. One thing he does know is how to get angry white men to vote for him. Clinton also said that he received a cordial phone call from Mr. Trump after the election. The president-elect responded on Twitter, writing, quote, Bill Clinton stated that I called him after the election. Wrong. He called me with a very nice congratulations. He doesn't know much, especially how to get people, even with an unlimited budget, out to vote in the vital swing states and more. They focused on the wrong states. This prompted a response from Bill Clinton, who tweeted, quote, here's one thing that real Donald Trump and I can agree on. I called him after the election. Joining now with reaction is Fox News contributor and editor-in-chief of LifeSet, Laura Ingraham. Okay, Laura, yeah, it's funny to go the back and forth on the tweets and all, but it really started with President Clinton blaming everyone except Hillary for her loss. He blamed the Russians. He blamed the phony email scandal. He blamed Comey. He blamed everyone except her lousy candidacy.
Yeah, the amazing thing about that is Bill Clinton should really know better than to make that angry white male comment. I mean, he was governor of Arkansas. I mean, he's a good old boy originally from Arkansas. He should know better. I mean, Hillary Clinton made that catastrophic mistake with her irredeemable and deplorable comment. And now Bill Clinton comes out after the election, after the Electoral College, and makes that a really bitter statement. That's the kind of thing that got them in trouble during the campaign. And it's odd because he usually has better judgment than that. He actually has a better, I think, sense of the people of this country than his wife did, certainly, because he obviously a two-term president. But it doesn't win them any friends, certainly doesn't win them any more support. So I find that really, that's odd. It's kind of sad, actually, for Bill Clinton, as sadness goes for someone worth $175 million.
You know what else he forgot? I don't know. Maybe he's just being a little forgetful, but he also forgot that he called Obamacare a crazy system with a couple of weeks left before the election. That didn't help either.
Yeah, he also said Obama, the candidate in 2008, was what did he say? One of the biggest fantasies ever, or something. So he trashed Obamacare. He at various times kind of stepped in it during the campaign season early on for Hillary Clinton. He became, in a way, too big of a personality. People said overshadowing her at some points. And at this point, again, it's sour grapes, and it's everything but what they need to do. That the Democrats need to do is figure out why the middle-class white voter is leaving the Democrat Party. And instead, they come out, and Bill Clinton comes out and says, well, you got a bunch of angry white males to vote for him. Like, if you're a white middle-class guy and you hear that, why are you ever going to vote Democrat again?
Yeah, I mean, in this narrative, it seems to be expanding. They want to keep on barking up this tree. MTV, I don't know if you saw it today. They had a video out with New Year's resolutions for white guys.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're pushing the race narrative, again, because it allows them to avoid the conversation that they need to have amongst themselves and with the mirror. Everyone's to blame except the man in the mirror. And again, if you want to tell like all white voters that they're bad people, they're dumb, they're a bunch of troglodytes, they're not smart, they're anti-intellectual, I guess you could do that. That to me seems like a really dumb political strategy, and it's really mean. Right. So they're the tolerant ones, they're the nice people, they like children, puppies, and lollipops on all the trees, but at the bitter end, they are about identity politics, Eric. They're about dividing this country, and they're still doing that in the aftermath of this shocking defeat of Hillary Clinton. Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
And it's not working for them. Now the Republicans have the White House. The Republicans have 52 senators. They have the Senate. They've got somewhere, I don't know, around 65 House advantage as well. They have 31 governorships across the country, and they're expanding. It doesn't look like whatever this identity politics game they've been playing for years is working.
It doesn't work, and beyond that, looking to the midterm election cycle, they have an enormous number of seats to defend. And if Trump starts improving the country, these policies start being enacted, the economy continues to grow. Again, I don't know where they're going to go with this argument. I'm just trying to look practically going forward. It seems to me that they have to go back to the Rust Belt and say, we heard you. We're going to tailor our policies and our message to your pain, and we're going to focus on advancing the interests of all Americans, but especially those in the middle and the working poor that have been left behind. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're going to focus on. To me, that would be a better strategy for them.
It should be tailored a little bit more specific. We blew you off. We lost. Now we're hearing you. Maybe we'll fix this going forward. Quick comment, about a minute or so. Michelle Obama saying hope is leaving the country, just as her husband and she are leaving the White House.
It's how she began. I mean, she began in the campaign of 2008, talking about first time as an adult she's proud of her country, and she seems to identify national pride with how she and her husband are doing. That's an odd thing to do. If you're successful, then you love the country. If you're unsuccessful or people don't buy into your policies, then you're not excited about the country, or you're not hopeful. And she said, Eric, if we don't have hope, what do we have? Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a couple of things we have. We have our freedom, we have our independence, we have our founding documents, we have our representative democracy, and we have our faith. Sometimes it's hard to have hope. Yeah, for sure. A lot of people were demoralized in 2008 and 2012. But guess what? We have a lot to be thankful for and grateful for in this country, regardless of what the political climate is. And that was a sad moment, I think, for Michelle Obama, and probably not the best way to end her time as First Lady.
All right. Laura Ingraham, we're going to say thank you, and we're going to leave it right there. We'd agree with you on all that stuff. Coming up next.
Merry Christmas, Eric.
Hey,
you did a great job
Laura,
this year.
Merry Christmas to you, too. Did I say it loud enough? Merry Christmas to you, too, Laura Ingraham.
All right. You did a great job this year, Eric. You gave really honest analysis and really on-target analysis when so many people were wrong. So hats off to you.
Thank you, and it goes right back at you as well. Thank you, Laura. All right, coming up right here next on Hannity.
I am asking Congress to support the construction of new roads, bridges, airports, tunnels, and railways all across our nation. We're going to do it.
President-elect Donald Trump vows to fix America's crumbling roads and bridges. The Washington Post is reporting that the president-elect is working to create a, quote, infrastructure task force to get the job done. Former Governor Mike Huckabee is here with reaction to that and a whole lot more as we continue.